Don't engage alone. We do this together.
Yeah,
We got it! We got it! 52 booklet.
somebody clip this one.
Welcome back to Comics League Movie Night, and we are here yet again with Sam Liu. What's up, dude?
You guys aren't tired of me yet?
Nah. We can never get tired of you. And I'm also here with JJheat. What's up, brother?
Flame on, Blaze Nation. How y'all doing tonight?
So today we are talking about Suicide Squad: Hell to Pay, and the first thing I want to bring up about this movie, that was the first thing I noticed when I watched this for the first time. This is like the most mature DC animated movie I have ever seen, in that people's heads, like when they do the whole head exploding for the Suicide Squad, buckets of blood like blast out, and I'm like, I get it because it's Suicide Squad, so it kind of makes sense for the IP. But Sam, I wanted to ask you, so what was like behind the decision to like go a little more mature as opposed to like the other DC movies?
I think this was like the. It might not have been it. You know how we make these movies, right? And then, time goes on and we're still working on stuff. So in my mind anyways, like I think Killing Joke had just came out, right, at the time.
Yep, around the same
before
time.
this. And one of the things that I kind of, it's like, you sort of like reflect on things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I was wondering if, because, it was like a cartoon and we didn't set the tone properly in the beginning. So, and I wonder if like that would have helped. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why this one for me, I was just like, I think we got to set the tone like right up front. Like this is not, you know what I mean? Like some sort of family friendly, like
oh no,
Batman movie or whatever. So let's just get in it and just set the tone like right off the top. Like this is a kind of a inappropriate, borderline inappropriate, like violent kind of thing. I mean, it's funny because like even when we were making it, I remember James was like, I think we had gotten some notes and there's like, man, this is really violent, and so we did these like little things, again, even I think the first one that he had mentioned was, one of the guards when they were sneaking up on the train and they're coming across, and the guy basically just gets his head blown off, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was just like, man, it's really violent. So I don't know. I think we reframed it a little bit, so it de-emphasized it a little bit. But I was just like, we gotta make sure we sort of set the tone. I think pretty up front, like what you're getting into.
Yeah, I mean, you're dealing with a team of villains that have bombs in their necks. You gotta, and plus, these aren't like. This isn't like you're making an R-rated Justice League movie where people are getting their heads chopped off and heads blown off. This is the Suicide Squad, a bunch of super villains. So it works for the tone of the movie. So, JJheat, do you have a question you want to ask Sam?
I feel like I want to adjust the flashpoint in the room. See what? But the decision to say what you will about the DeCamu movies largely being job security or a hollow connected universe, or whatever have you. But would you say the decision to reference Flashpoint came from the higher ups or something that was decided in house?
Oof, I'm not, because James Tucker is sort of like the sort of mastermind of all this, right?
Yes.
And I think I've mentioned this before, but I mean, just it's sort of like that. There's these ideas that we internally, that we were trying to do, and some of it isn't about creativity, right? It's about sort of like being able to produce it, right? The whole decision to sort of make, a persistent at least, you know, within these like parts, right? It's like
Right.
there's these sections, right, of I guess what we call the Decamu thing now, versus like the new one, which is I guess they call the Tomorrowverse or whatever.
Yeah.
Part of it is a production thing, right?
Right.
Because in the beginning, when you know this wasn't really, you know, it was more of an experiment than really a thing, right? Like we were just kind of going like, oh, we should do this comic, and then yeah, of course we, you know, if we have the resources and whatever, you know, we're going to try to make it look as much as a comic as we can, you know, given what we have, right? But that's really time consuming, and you know, with the cutting of stuff or whatever, it's just like it becomes really difficult, right? Because even when you work on a series, right, it's kind of like, you know, you have to build all these assets. You know, you have to like, you know, from the main heroes to basically the incidentals that are walking down the street, right? It's like if it needs to look like Ed McGuinness or whatever, it's just like, okay, now we got to draw it. Everything needs to look like Ed McGuinness, you know, or try to make it look like that, right? So it's kind of, I don't know, because again, that's a one shot or whatever. It's a lot of effort, you know, just to sort of like, you know, get it out there and make it look, you know, and that's not even sort of like filmmaking or any of that kind of stuff, right? It's just, it becomes really, really, you know, resource intensive. And so, so I think this was the first one that they sort of really tried that. Like, we're just going to try to like have a persistent universe, right? And so given with that, James tried really hard to connect everything, right? But that's not sort of how it is as far as like when, you know, these things get greenlit, right? It's not like, hey, we're going to do this like, you know, like a series, but in these long forms, and they're all going to kind of connect. James is the only one that's sort of like, okay, I'll pick, you know, Judas Contract, you know what I mean? And then I'll try to set it up a little bit while I'm doing, you know, this other movie kind of a thing. You know what I mean? Like the Owls type thing or something like that. Do you know what I mean? And then what can I do with given these things? So again, it's like so in the approval process, he's taking Judas Contract, right? But James is like, I'm taking Judas Contract with them in mind that I can make it flow into a continuity. I can introduce these kind of characters, and I can sort of like have them sort of continue, right? So there's a lot of like extra sort of like creative work that kind of happens. You know what I mean? That's outside of basically what we sort of sign up for. So, you know, I mean, given, you know, understanding that, it's pretty amazing what he was able to connect. Do you know what I mean? Because, you know, again, it's just like, that's the business of it. It's like, right, they didn't sign off on basically, you know, this connective universe or whatever, you know, they're signing off on these graphic novels that, you know, they think are popular and that people are going to want to see. So, I forgot.
And I just want to add to your response there. And I know I'm usually known as the comics guy, second only to Jared here, who actually is Comics League.
I'm the Lord of Comics. We've established this.
But I'm going to be a little meta on this one.
Oh boy!
I believe halfway through the DeCamu's lineup, they started focusing on non-New 52 adjacent stories like Judas Contract, Death and Return of Superman, more so the adaptations and trying to fit the continuity rather than just adapting the story themselves. Now, as previously mentioned by our guest here, Judas Contract was essentially the debut of Richard Grayson's Nightwing persona. So that means Grayson should have a key role in the story.
No, it wasn't.
It's when he officially dons the Nightwing persona by the end. He may not have come up with it in that story, but he definitely tests it out.
Oh, you mean the comic? I thought you meant the animated movie.
No, yeah. No, I'm talking about the Judas Contract comic. In the movie, it's completely changed.
Okay. I was a little confused here.
Take your time, Jed. I know this is a lot.
I've had a long day. Stop it.
But to make it a long story short, a lot of and I actually know from fans and social media outlets, a lot of people would have preferred Judas Contract adapted as an Elseworld or just a standalone rather than in DeCamu or in continuity film, because Damian Wayne took up a lot of the spotlight. And this is essentially Richard Grayson's story, or at least a key Richard Grayson story. And Damian's just completely snubbing him again.
And the other thing that I will bring up is that I had someone in my comments once say that part of the thing about the lighter DeCamu is that they tried to fit like non-new 52 stories in like very they tried to fit essentially new 52 stories, characters into non-new 52 things, like obviously doing like death of Superman and such. And obviously that didn't really happen in the comics. So that was, it's a good attempt. I still say like most of the movies actually pulled that off pretty well. Even though I can't stand Lois Lane, I'd say Death did it pretty well. Even Judas Contract, I still maintain was pretty good. But for comments, by the way, Dave says, damn good movie, the best Suicide Squad film, period. It felt like John Ostrander's suicide on steroids. Yeah, it's very much, it feels very much like a classic Suicide Squad story. Hell to Pay and Arkham Assault may be the best Suicide Squad adaptations out there, at least in my opinion. There you go. This film was good and gets extra points from me for having my favorite DC villain in it, the Reverse Flash. Yeah, on that, it was really cool when I was rewatching it. What I realized is that because, and Deadshot even says in the movie, it's like if Reverse Flash wanted, he could like murder all of us. But what I like about what you guys did in the movie is that you put like a certain limit on his power. Like he's on a timetable, he's gonna die, so he can't like go all out and just murder everyone.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, I mean, again, it's we work with parameters, right? Again, it's like I understand, like purists are gonna like want you know the Judas Contract faithfully, but you know, it's that book's a little rough. You know what I mean? If you just
especially and
even the stuff that we did stick with, you know, fans don't like it, you know, but it's like that's straight from the source material, you know.
You're never gonna 100%
please everyone
satisfy comic book fans.
Yeah. And again, the only way we were able to make it, because again, we're not gonna we again, like as I was explaining, right, as a Elseworld standalone, it's really, really time, you know, and resource intensive.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, again, I have one character designer that has designed everything, right?
Okay.
And you know, even in the past, they only had two, right? And so that's a lot of work for two people.
A lot of strain,
you know. And so we reuse a lot of stuff is because again, we just don't have the resources to do it. Like they don't give us the money to do it. We have to, if we want all these different environments and stuff like that, it's got to come from somewhere, right?
Yes.
And again, like we can only, like if I only have like two background designers, and they have to design every background in it.
Yeah, geez.
It's impossible. Do you know what I mean? So again, it's like if that's the only way it was going to get made. You know what I mean?
And the thing is, I've always said, like, I can like abide by like some deviations from the source material if the story calls for it, and you keep to like the general gist of the movie. I mean, like last week we were talking about Red Sun, and we talked about how you changed some stuff in there, but you still kept to the overall spirit. Like, what is this story trying to tell? Is it telling the same story from the source material? Yes. Then I'm fine with it. Because I understand. Like I said, every week I have you on, some stuff is not going to translate from like comic to animated.
Right. And I think, you know, even I think back about it, and I think I've mentioned the story before, right? It's kind of like when I was looking at Marvel, right? And I remember like we were talking about, you know, okay, what story we're going to do, right? The one that they had, you know, in mind, it ran into like legal issues as far as like characters and who owned what. Like Fox owned, you know. Anyways, I don't want to get too far into it, but so we had to scrap it, right? So we had to come up with like, okay, what are we going to do next, right? And so I remember we were talking about things like, you know, why don't we do the Walt Simonson Beta Ray Bill Thor, right? And again, it's just like people would, as a fan, right? You guys have read it, right?
Yes, I've read it.
Okay. I haven't yet.
Okay, so I remember when it came out, right? Because I'm older, right? So, and I was just like, wow, this is awesome, right? I was just like, this is crazy, crazy good. I could not wait. You know, I mean, I loved Walt Simonson's run. All the Thor
solid
stuff.
Series, solid run. Run.
But as a story, it's not a good Thor story. Just coming in on it, right? So again, I think things like Judas Contract, you know, like a lot of other stories and stuff like that, right? And we think about these, you know, we consider this while we're, you know, picking, you know, is like, you know, these may be classical stories, but you enjoy it as a comic book reader is because you read the stuff that came before it, you know, where, you know, the character's at this point, and then this thing happens, right? But again, like I go back to Thor because again, like the Thor Beta Ray Bill thing, right? Thor is weak. He loses like multiple times. You know, he loses his hammer. He's crying to his dad, right? He gets beat up. His he's lying in the bed recovering, and he's just like, oh, I don't deserve to be Thor, blah, 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 whatever. And his dad basically gives him, okay, now we get a chance to fight. You know what I mean? So, but Ben Ray Bill is the hero of the story. I mean, Thor is like whining the whole time and losing, and then Sif, his girlfriend, chooses to go with Ben Ray Bill. So he loses, you know what I mean? Like, it's not a good Thor story. I don't know if that's your first introduction to Thor, you're like, why would I even like this guy? He's a wuss.
It's definitely a deconstruction piece. And I believe that this was the Gore the God Butcher art. Thank you. Gore the God Butcher art was in a similar situation with Original Sin. But even then, that run actually had Thor, Odin's son, in a prominent role. He wasn't crying the whole time.
Mm.
You can tell deconstruction stories not without it being at the character's expense.
I mean, Watchmen is very deconstructive.
I mean, hey, perfect example. And even if we go back to adaptations with Judas Contract, and I say this purely to the purists in the back, DeCambu's Judas Contract was a pretty standard play-by-play. Outside the roster change and the whole Robin, Deathstroke, Nemesis stuff that was established in Son of Batman and earlier films, there weren't that many changes in the grand scheme of things.
And
there really weren't.
And like, there's one change that you definitely had to like downplay a little bit is the whole
obviously other than that one.
Deathstroke Terra thing, and I'm like, yeah, I'm glad you guys changed that. I'm like, yeah.
It was worse than the comic, right? It was way worse.
Oh god.
And people still like were just like, oh, why would they put this in there? And just like, I don't know, like, do you want it or you don't want it? You know what I mean? Like, we touched on it because we felt like we had to.
That's a change where I'm like, no. Yeah, change that.
Yeah.
But so going back to Suicide Squad, I actually have a fun little question for you. Who is your favorite member of the Suicide Squad and why?
Oh, wow. In this story, right? I mean, it's kind of about, I don't know, Deadshot, right?
Yeah.
And, arguably a little bit about Bronze Tiger, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, I don't know. I felt like we focused on those characters. Do you know what I mean? Like, so just the sort of, it's almost like Bronze Tiger's not even like a villain in this, right? He's almost like the most righteous out of all of them.
He's kind of not. Yeah, exactly. It's like he's the closest to a good guy. It's like even in his introduction, Amanda Waller says if he didn't have a thing against killing innocent people, he'd be the team leader.
Yeah. And so I kind of felt like it was, I mean, there was a whole, like a montage that I kind of wanted to do. But again, we didn't have time or the money for it, right? And so I tried to create scenes where we could have, like when he, it's I'm sure people would have hated it because it's really kind of artsy, right? But it's like when they decide basically, okay, well, because it's almost like, okay, we're on this mission, we're on this road trip, right? It's like a road trip movie through America, right? and so
I love that.
I wanted to do these like, when they were just kind of like when Bronze Tiger gets blown up, right? And he's just basically, like, he's out basically, right? He's on the floor and he's got a blanket over him, right? I wanted to do this almost like a music montage with almost this like sort of a U2-ish kind of like, or old school kind of a thing of them just traveling, because that by this point in the movie, right, which is like the probably later third of the movie, they're just traveling to basically confront,
Vandal Savage.
Vandal Savage, yeah, man, I'm forgetting the names.
It's all good.
And I kind of wanted to do this thing of just like these images of them just driving, you know what I mean? And then like looking out the window and the scenery going by, you know what I mean? With like, again, this sort of a Americana kind of, U2-ish kind of, Wide Awake in America kind of like, thing playing.
It would have been a nice touch.
Yeah.
Kind of cool.
And again, just shots of them, just kind of like just thinking and just being introspective. And then, do you know what I mean? And then they finally get to, okay, now, they need to, basically, assault the compound,
I did like all those scenes of them just driving and then it kind of changes. We're like, now Deadshot's standing up here and now Harley Quinn's driving.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was kind of, again, this, you know, outside of being what it is, it's funny because one of the board artists that was on there, right? He's you know, he's a you know, he's like a family man. You know what I mean? He had qualms about working on this, right? He's like, I don't know, this is like a really violent. You know what I mean? Like just you know, it's not a good family movie, right?
No.
And
Baby's first Suicide Squad movie.
Yeah. But you know, to me again, you know, I really felt like it's like a redemption movie in a way, right? Yeah. And I kind of felt like there was I don't know, there's a really human element to it, right? That I felt like was really the core of the movie, right? Again, even the end, the card, you know, it's like a free redemption card almost. Do you know what I mean? And so, and him to give it to, you know what I mean? The person that wanted it was Waller, right? Who's basically dying from cancer. And giving it to Ron. You know what I mean? It's just, I just kind of felt like there was a, outside of it being this really violent kind of whatever, there's a real, I don't know, like an honorable thing that happens. Right.
That's my favorite scene in the movie where he hands Amanda Waller the card and he goes, "Don't worry, it definitely still works."
Right.
That was like my favorite thing. But yeah, going off of that, yeah, it definitely it's about a redemption story, particularly with like Deadshot, because if you notice in any portrayal of him, because this is really his character, the reason why he's trying to like get out of prison so he can see his daughter. Everything is motivated by his daughter. We even see that in the movie in the beginning. So it's really like, yeah, he's a villain, but he's not like, he's no Captain Boomerang.
Yeah.
He's a merc for hire. The reason he's on the squad is because he gets caught in a job gone bad. That's really all it boils down to.
And then we obviously have Bronze Tiger, who probably my headcanon is maybe he killed a bunch of people, that like killed his fiance. He was captured and then turned into a Suicide Squad. Because really, I'm like, what would he do? What would this honorable dude do that puts him on the Suicide Squad?
Right.
I'm like, wait a second here.
Yeah. So I guess those two are, you know, again, just that dynamic, you know what I mean, of kind of like what it's, you know, sold as, you know, the situation that they're in, and then there's these people, but then you get to know that, you know what I mean, there's something actually very honorable about them, and then even between the two of them, who basically are adversarial towards each other, right? Which was kind of set up at the beginning, whatever. It's almost like they see each other and they understand each other in a way. Doing by the end, and even the end, you know, he does the honorable, you know, Deadshot does the sort of honorable thing, right? So I don't know. I just kind of felt like this called, I don't know if wholesome is the right word, but there's
in this movie. I also love, he's like, see around Waller, he walks around, and I was thinking about this today, and it just clicked. You still have a bomb in your neck that she has the detonator to. What are you doing? Can you take this out? Can you do something here so my head doesn't blow up? But the other thing that's kind of funny, the other reaction when I first watched this was, Vandal Savage has a daughter? Because again, I had only been exposed to that character in like JLU or like any of the other like DC movies where he showed up, like Just League Doom. So I'm like, okay, the daughter's cool. And then see, I'm marking myself as the Lord of Comics, as you know. I think I know my stuff. I had no idea who the hell Knockout was. I was like,
She's a very obscure apocalyptic character, like C/D list. You would barely recognize her if you saw her as an Easter egg. You would barely recognize her.
Yeah, you guys got to get James Tucker on, because again, he goes deep.
Love to.
Yeah, he goes deep. So
that's my job, but that's my next job. I got Sam on, now I need James on. But the other thing that I really what I dig also with like at least to me when I was watching this movie, kind of had like a little bit like some like religious themes in terms of everyone's trying to get to heaven, and some people are doing it for righteous reasons, and some people are just Captain Boomerang or the Reverse Flash. So I really like how you like toe the line into like talking about a sort of religion without going too ham-fisted in there.
Yeah, for sure. You know, again, it's this. I don't know. I think that's why, like, again, I thought it was such a like a good story. You know what I mean? It's like there's the card. Do you know what I mean? Or the spiritual element of it, right? And it's like people want it for different reasons. People want a redemption for different things, right? And so the whole thing of, you know, which I felt like was kind of reflected a little bit of the card bouncing around and everybody trying to grab it, kind of a thing. You know what I mean? That was like almost like a, I don't know, a metaphor for it in a way, you know?
Yeah.
And you know, again, and even sort of in the face of it, it's like, you know, who are they going to help to kind of get it, kind of a thing? You know what I mean? If you know that you're going to die, you know what I mean? Like, do you pick a side, or do you know what I mean? And even that kind of is telling, I feel like, a little bit of the characters and stuff like that. So, yeah, I don't know. Again, I just thought it was like one of those really fun, almost heisty kind of movies in a way.
Yeah.
You know?
It kind of is. That's a good point. I never thought about it that way. And the other scene, by the way, I liked is when the card obviously is used on Bronze Tiger. Deadshot sees the whole thing going, and he goes, "Oh, so it is a real thing." He's like, "Oh wow, I was just getting this because of the bomb in my neck, but I didn't know this is an actual thing." Yeah. It's kind of like in the previous movie, Justice League Dark, where Batman spends a significant portion of that movie doubting that magic exists.
And it's like, the same trope. It's the same
like
trope.
You work with the Kryptonian sun god. I'm pretty sure. Is it really that hard to believe magic exists, dude? You work with a dude that has a power ring. I think you can believe in magic.
Well, technically, he thinks it's science, but
well, yeah,
it's future science.
Well, yeah, that's what he likes to say, but still, I'm like, I love. There was a line in like Justice League when like Flash first encounters Gorilla Grodd, and what's kind of funny is Green Lantern goes, "A talking gorilla? That seems a little far fetched." And then Flash goes, "We both have a Martian in our speed dial. I think we're beyond far fetched." I love when they do that. JJheat, do you have any questions?
As for me, I definitely feel it's not really so much a question, it's a statement. Because I really feel like the Suicide Squad, I know there's a tie-in comic sequel to it, but this really easily could have gotten a second film. Like, same story direction, same creative team on it. I could have easily seen this getting a sequel, and I kind of hate that it didn't.
Yeah, I mean, you know, there's a couple of when basically, you know, DeCamu ended, right? It was kind of a surprise to us, right? I mean, we thought we were going to have a little more time. I think, you know, James has mentioned that, you know, we would have liked to have had one more Teen Titans movie, one more Suicide Squad movie, and one more Dark movie. But again, it's just like when we sort of got the word that we got to wrap it, because, you know, the apocalypse thing, right?
Yeah.
And, I think I've mentioned this before, and I think it's been on the internet a little bit. But James originally was working on Dark 2, right? And I don't even know what the story was because I wasn't directing it, right? But when we got the word, he's like, okay, since we know that this is going to be the last one, the story's got to be different. So I think they scrapped the whole thing, and basically it was just like, it needs to be a tie up the universe story. And so it became kind of what it was. Again, it caught us a little bit by surprise. You know, it ended sooner than we, I guess, kind of expected, you know, or hoped, I should say, because, you know, the business is the business. We thought we were going to have a little more time, basically. You know, I mean, I thought I was going to be working on this for a while, actually, but you know,
I can see it.
Yeah, at a certain point, you do detect it as you're watching all these in sequence, and I'm like, so we got this Suicide Squad, and then all of a sudden, Apocalypse War, and I'm like,
yeah,
what?
Yeah, if we had a little more, you know, notice, it would have been probably a smoother ramp to it.
To be clear, Apocalypse War is still a dope ass movie. I love that movie, but I'm just like, Oh, yeah, exactly. I would have liked a little bit more of like you said, a smooth landing into that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I will say on that, it is kind of you do end it in actually a really cool way where like this universe started with Flashpoint and then ends with another Flashpoint.
It's a build up as much as it is a teardown. And to answer your comment, Dave the Impaler, Sinestro Corps War, I probably wouldn't recommend that one specifically because you still need a lot of build up for that. But definitely we could have gotten the Green Lantern movie. I just wouldn't have done Sinestro Corps War specifically.
That would have been cool. I would have. I said this the first time I had you on. I would have liked to have seen like a Superman Wonder Woman team up movie, particularly in the portion of the universe where they were a couple before that got taken off screen. Yes, I'm not letting that go, JJheat. I'm not letting that go.
All I'm gonna say on that is that the Death and Return of Superman is just as much a Lois Lane story as it is a Superman story. So you're kind of limited here.
Okay, the comic part I'll push back on for the death part. The other part, the Return of Superman, yeah, I can give you that because Lois is heavily in that. Death, not so much, at least from how I read it. But
second act onward, Lois plays a role, but definitely with Reign, you got to give Lois something.
Yeah, definitely with Reign, and
I mean that's how we approached it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean, Reign and Superman, we were just like, this is a Lois story, you know, it's her figuring, she's the detective in it, she's the one that's basically connecting all the pieces or whatever, or we're seeing it through basically, you know.
Jared is just steaming in the corner.
Because Sam, as we've mentioned before, my least favorite DC character is Lois Lane. But
yeah,
I will play devil's advocate. You could have gotten more than a throwaway line. I will concede that much.
But on that, the one thing I will say about Return of Superman specifically is I like how you got rid of the Justice League for most of the movie. So everyone's like, well, the Justice League will stop Cyborg Superman. I'm like, no, they're in another dimension. So I'm like, okay, that works. I can deal with that. That works. Kind of avoided that whole plot hole that would have arose. Because that's the funny thing about the original Death of Superman comic, because the Justice League sucks because it's like fire, ice, Booster Gold, where it's like, at least in the movie Death, I'm like, at least you use the actual Justice League, the ones that could stand up to Doomsday.
Technically, the original storyline, it's called Doomsday. It was just marketed as the Death and Return of Superman after the fact. And I believe
by what's on the trades now, JJheat.
Fair enough, but I'm pretty. And as for the weak roster, it was mostly the JLI, Justice League International, because I believe the main Justice League team was disbanded at the time. I could be wrong on that. That's just what I remember.
That sounds familiar, I believe.
Now, yeah, you know, again, just because a lot of what the space we work in, right, is the sort of like, oh, this might be the first time that somebody is introduced to it, you know, and so again, like the JLI, you know, quote unquote, sort of secondary type of heroes that people may not be familiar with. They'd be like, who are these characters?
Who is this?
Right? Because we're gonna have no time to like basically explain them, right, or build them up. I mean, it's hard enough just to sort of tell the story, right? But these characters we've never introduced, do you know what I mean? Or some of them are going to be the first time you've ever seen them. I think it's a distraction that we just kind of felt like it didn't need.
Yeah, and it's like even when he went from like Justice League versus Teen Titans to like, let's say, Death of Superman, all of a sudden John Stewart, Green Lantern, and Hawkman are on the league, and I'm like, where did you come from? But yeah, it was still cool. I still appreciated that. But yeah, I agree with Dave. I wish that the universe got more. I do like how in the new Crisis on Infinite Earths animated movies, they actually reference the second Flashpoint. So they, like you said before, I like how they basically tie all this together, because it's like, it doesn't decanonize any of the movies. So it's like, if you can still like watch them and still like happened, if you will.
Yeah. And, you know, again, it's like the whole thing of like, in order to sort of do the Death of Superman, right? Like,
yeah,
because all the way up to that point, Superman was going out with Wonder Woman, you know, and then there was this really hard, clunky thing of like,
I brought that up. Yeah, exactly.
Because again, it's, you know, it would just be weird.
You're just gonna give him and Britt more ammo. I'm sorry, Sam.
And here's Britt. Britt said, you could have done Super Doom still involved Doomsday, but it's actually in the New 52. So what Super Doom was, because I know you're not as caught up on the comics stuff. So what they did is that in the New 52, they did the whole Doomsday buildup, but instead of kill Superman, they turned Doomsday into kind of a virus, and then Superman inhaled him to like stop him from like spreading everywhere, and then he was slowly turning into Doomsday.
Oh,
imagine Superman and Hulk merged together. That's basically
only way worse. So it's like that's kind of what Britt's talking about, but it's like I was fine with it because the thing about it is that I was going through it for clips because I was making a fan edit. And the thing I like about at least Death, even if I don't like the clunky changeover from Wonder Woman to Lois, I do like how that movie makes you feel like everyone loves Superman in the universe. So it's like it's very. So I'm like, you know what? As a Superman guy specifically, I mean, I'm wearing the shirt. I'm like, you know what? Yeah, I'll take it.
Yeah, because so much of, again, like, these stories that, I don't know, I was kind of, mentioning before, but it's like, we have to be conscious of the fact that, like, not everybody's going to be familiar with some of these characters, right?
Yeah.
And, like,
yes.
I go back to the Thor thing, because another story that sort of came up was the death of Odin, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was, it was basically, again, these stories of Odin had died, and I can't remember who it was, but it was kind of like, just going around Asgard and sort of hearing these people's stories of Odin kind of thing, right? Which is a great thing if you, knew Odin and you've lived with Odin and you kind of know how great he is. But if you're just coming in like this person died and take me, take my word, he was a great guy, he was a great ruler and stuff like that. And just hearing all these sort of stories, sentimental stories of them is kind of like, I don't know if that's a great movie to me,
Well, the other thing to consider is, was this pre the Marvel movies coming out?
Oh yeah, I mean, because
I was about to say, if it came out like, if it was coming out like after Thor 1, I think you could have gotten away with doing the Odin thing.
Yeah, these came out, I think, before even Disney bought Marvel.
Oh wow.
Marvel,
yeah,
I mean, because
way back.
Yeah, because I remember we had worked. I feel like what we had done is basically, we made basically pitch material to sell the movies, basically. Because I think when we were working on Iron Man, there was an animated Iron Man thing that we were working on. Jon Favreau was shooting Iron Man at the time.
Okay.
Like, he hadn't even finished it yet, so.
No, that's interesting. I do, and I do very much enjoy the animated Iron Man movie that came out at that point. So let me ask you this: as going back to Suicide Squad, like, what was one of the challenges working with the Suicide Squad? I mean, I know you brought up like the more mature theme, but is there any other like difficulties you ran into with this project?
Again, like, a lot of times I feel like when I work on a project, right, I'm trying to sort of figure out what the point of the movie is, or the theme of it is, right, and everything sort of builds around that, right. I think one of the I don't know, it is kind of a silly thing, but I think it's just like the characters are so interesting. I know a lot of people hate the Dr. Fate version in this. But
no one likes to be. Wait. So you're telling me there are people that are against the exotic dancer Dr. Fate?
But he's such a funny character, right?
He's so good. I love that guy.
I remember the board artist who had worked on it, right? And she was awesome, right? But she made this thing into this. It's only supposed to be like whatever, like a 3-minute thing, right? She made it into like a 10-minute like thing, right? And I remember she, I was just like, we got to cut this, and we got to, and she was just like why, and I'm like, because it's too long, right? And so she was just really grumpy. I was like, okay, fine, let's just leave it in, right? And I was like, because I have to show it. We'll have to show. We build it and then we show it to James, basically,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so I was just like, okay, fine. Well, we'll leave it in because I'll tighten up as much as kind of what it I felt like is kind of necessary, and then we'll just show it to James and I'll let him make the call. And he was just like, it was so funny, right? I mean, there was shots of him peeing off into the void and things like that. Just really like just knucklehead stuff, right? And James is like, this is all really good. It's just like, but this isn't the Dr. Fate movie.
Yeah.
So yeah, the board arts was pretty sad because we had to cut like it way down. So I think that was like one of the difficulties of it, because I think again, like there's just a lot of interesting characters and there's a lot of things that you can sort of expand upon. You know what I mean? And it got a little fat. And again, the other thing too, which I really wanted, this sort of artsy fartsy side of me. Again, I really wanted that road trip montage. But because at the time, again, I was splitting duties between directing for James and Bruce, right? And so I feel really kind of bad about it. But again, like I with James, like I was kind of expecting that to be there, because there's a certain point, because I was in post when I had to start up something with Bruce, right? And so I remember, so I wasn't able to sort of sit into the final edit with them. And so I was really disappointed that it wasn't in there. I remember just, I don't know, maybe giving him a little bit of a hard time of like, I thought we were going to put that in there for sure, because I was so married to it. Do you know what I mean? Like I really wanted this really emotional, you know what I mean? Because they didn't even write music for it, because again, these things again are so, there's never enough time. Because again, the poor composer, he was just saying like the composer didn't even have time to sort of, you know what I mean? Like create a piece of music for that, and we would have to create that with existing footage already, right? Which I had tried to plan already, right? Of shots of panning backgrounds. We had this thing of like, driving down the road and these, billboards kind of going up, and we're going to change out the billboards and maybe take a few off this side and, change the night to day type of thing, and just have different sort of graphics, just kind of imply that we're kind of going from a different city to a different city type of thing. But again, that's just the top, even though we didn't have to sort of spend the money on the animation, somebody would have to sort of create that, you know what I mean? Which costs time, right? Which we didn't have. So those are I guess, sort of the painful things for me, you know what I mean? Or the difficulties for me is like, there's things that you plan for and you kind of hope for, but, and again, most of the times, you just don't have time to do it, so.
Well, at the very least, what I can say is that the movie's really good. So at least the project came out and it was good. I will say one more scene that I wanted to talk about that I felt was like really brutal is the scene when is the death by 1,000 cuts scene when reverse. I was like, that is like it's very like, because when I was watching it today, it was so visceral to me that like I actually had trouble watching it because he's like slashing, and I'm like, oh god, that's gotta hurt.
Yeah. Another great board artist did that whole section. So there's quite a few, I guess, again, like sections in it, because I had a really talented crew that was on it. I wish some of it was animated better, but like that whole fight, in the pool, in that penthouse pool area up top and stuff like that. The boards look so cool in that thing, just the movement on it and everything. And it's 70% there, you know what I mean? But it could have been super cool, I felt like,
It's all good. Again, I still felt it was cool. JJheat, do you have any another question for Sam?
Nothing else comes to mind, but once again, I'm just glad to be talking to you, and this has been just a great discussion. But Dave seems to have something. Top 3 DCAMU movies from what you've worked on.
Oh boy.
Wow. That I've worked on. I mean, I really had a good time working on the Titans movies,
Yeah.
I mean, I just love their interactions, you know, and I know that there's this whole sort of Damian Wayne and like Raven thing, whatever that sort of sprungish from that, you know. But again, they're, you know, because a lot of times, again, like I was saying, right, it's like when I read a script, I'm trying to find like what the heart of it, right, or and the point of it and stuff like that, right. But because their relationship at the beginning wasn't really supposed to be that type of relationship, that, you know, but they made so much sense to me. You know what I mean? Like they're children of these gods, basically, right? These like leaders of, you know what I mean, like Ra's al Ghul, right?
Yeah,
who wants to take
I
over
get it now. I get it
Trigon,
now.
right? And they're the children of them that were supposed to be the heir apparent to that, right? And they're kind of rebelling a little bit against that. And I was just like, man, like as a 14-year-old child, you know what I mean? Like that must be hard, you know, right? And so
yeah,
they're together and they're in the same situation. Like, of course they would bond. You know, do you know what I mean? And so I don't know, just, you know, Blue Beetle, you know what I mean? And even just was his thing, and like, you know, when the whole Terra thing, like, and with Beast Boy, you know, like even just like the end, just like the reads, like Brendan Suhu, right, who played the voice of Beast Boy, just the way he read that sort of thing at the end about, you know, he's on that show, you know, and he's trying to just play it off and stuff like that, but he starts getting really, really emotional in it and stuff like that, and just hitting it with the right imagery, and then the sentimental. I don't know. It's just like I remember being in, you know, the mix, right, which is basically all the sound effects and the music. You know what I mean? And when we're sort of finalizing and pinpointing that, I just remember being at the end of it, just going like, man, this feels like a movie. You know, it's like it's such a sad, I don't know, fulfilling end to me. So I don't know, those Titans ones supposedly, I mean, I think a lot of times, again, because, you know, when I read comics, right, it's like it started when I was younger, right, and so when I read comics, I kind of go back to basically like why I love them, you know what I mean, why I was a fan of them, right, and it was these stories, right, these stories of heroism, you know what I mean, overcoming things, you know, be the wish fulfillment of, you know, empowerment, you know what I mean, but also sort of the tragedy that happens within these big responsibilities and things like that. So I don't know why I get like the whole thing about them being, I guess, younger but trying to be adults, you know what I mean. I don't know, there's something about that dynamic that because you get to, because, you know, when you play like like younger kids, they can make mistakes, you know what I mean, they can do silly things, you know. Whereas like Batman, he's always got to be, it's very limited what you can do with him, right? Even if you have him cry, like that's like a debate with James and I that we joke about, right? Because, you know, like at the end of Flashpoint, even, right, the whole thing of like the tear coming out, you know, like I'm just like, I think it's too much, you know. Even like the end of like Death of Superman, right? The amount of people that are crying, I'm just like, I think there's too much crying. It's like, no, they gotta cry, you know. I'm just like, you know, I don't know. It's weird to me when Batman cries. Do you know what I mean? But as kids, you can do that. You know
with
what I mean?
The death of Superman, I think you actually handled that pretty well. Batman showing emotion, because it's like when Superman dies, you see Batman, he's got a fist, and then the fist just collapses. It's not like you don't see crying or anything. Right. You see his eyes widen because he's like, oh my gosh, he's dead. But then then he's not the tough guy. That's because
that's all you can do with him, or else because at one point you cross the line, right?
Yeah. That's as close to an emotional reaction as Batman will ever have. So there you go.
Yeah.
But that's the other thing I think it's funny about the Teen Titans specifically. When you look at those movies, I'm like, I'm sorry, the Justice League saved the world from like Darkseid 2 times, but the Teen Titans saved the world from Satan.
Right.
I'm like, don't count these guys out. Come on. I'm like, wait a second here. I'm like, these guys save the world half the time when the Justice League isn't.
Right. Yeah, but also sort of their powers manifesting and being like, you know, small and sort of like, again, kind of weak, like Raven. Do you know what I mean? But then, you know, it's like when the Raven power comes out, it's this huge thing that basically, you know what I mean, like almost dwarfs the city, kind of a thing. I don't know. Those things are really sort of powerful to me, you know.
And plus, when you think about it, you call them the children of gods. A lot of them are gods, like Raven. So it still kind of works. Dave asked, One question I've always had about Suicide Squad: what religion is portrayed in the universe? Why did Waller feel the need to use the card instead of seeking redemption in traditional ways like Christianity? That's a really complicated question, Dave.
I don't know. You would have to ask Alan Burnett that. Oh, and by the way, I think this was Alan Burnett's final sort of like full script.
Okay.
You know, for us, anyways. You know, I think he was, because he was again retired. I think around this time, and so I really wanted to work on it because again, like, you know, again, there was something really kind of spiritual about this one, which I was just like, oh, that's kind of.
Which you wouldn't expect. What movie should we have it address religion and like Christianity? The Suicide Squad, where people's heads are being blown off. I'm like, well, that's quite the choice.
I don't know. We get criticism about, you know, like, oh, we don't like Christianity, or like we portray Christianity in a bad way or something like that. But you know, I think a lot of times, again, we need basically an angle and a trope, and we're not trying to get specific in, you know what I mean, like any specific religion or specific kind of you know thing. It's just like, okay, that's this is from a religious angle, and then this
like
is from
any religion, whether it's Christianity, Judaism, Islam, it doesn't matter. You can apply this, which that works. And by the way, I don't know where that criticism came from, because I never felt you were being disrespectful to Christianity, to any religion at all. So I don't know where that came from. That's just comic book fans that complain about stuff. But Britt brings up an interesting question. Were there any plans for Donna? She was introduced in the end credit scene of, I think it was the Judas Contract scene when Beast Boy's on the Kevin Smith show.
Yeah. You know, it's funny because there was it was a long time ago when this came out, but we were trying to figure out, like, you know, who we were going to introduce, right? And again, like, originally, like, Stargirl wasn't going to be in there, but I think Jeff Johns really wanted her because, you know, Jeff Johns really loves. So she replaced somebody. I thought it was Donna Troy, but shoot, I can't remember where Donna Troy is now. In that.
She's Wonder Woman's like sidekick. She's the one who like flies up at the end of Titans when he says
post-credit scene.
Yeah, it's where like
because I thought we changed that to Stargirl. It's not Stargirl.
No, it's Donna Troy.
No, it's still Donna Troy.
Is it? Okay, maybe it was going to be Stargirl, but we're like, it's got to be Donna Troy.
Yeah, because
she's in, you know what I mean, the original Titans and stuff. So
she's the founder. She's a founding member of the Titans. It's like having the Justice League without Wonder Woman.
Yeah, and so I mean, you know, a lot of times I think James does this stuff so it allows room to grow, right? And so again, I don't think we had talked about the next Titan story, you know, if we were actually able to do the third one, you know. But yeah, I mean, all those people. I mean, even like when Jericho, you know what I mean? I'm like, well, the guy that's supposed to sort of be Jericho, I was just like, I wonder if James is going to do something with that. Because originally, even which movie was it? But we had Blackfire as like there was one entrance where Blackfire was, you know, it was supposed to be this, you know, this shot on a different planet where she's on the throne, basically. And there's like a gladiator thing happening or whatever. And then we, you know, after that finishes, we pan up to see that it's Blackfire. But that was a version of one of the scripts. But I think we canned it for the Jericho thing.
Okay. Yeah. Dave has the honor of having the last question of the night. So Dave asks, was there any conscious synergy between Hell to Pay and the Suicide Squad movies that were actually in the movie theaters?
Not really. You know, because we're so small, you know what I mean? I know that things do affect, because I think like Long Halloween was held up. You know, I didn't work on it on Long Halloween, but Long Halloween was actually supposed to be the first thing in the Tomorrowverse that was going to get released. But because of the Matt Reeves movie, it got pushed back. And so
I see.
Yeah.
Mm.
And so these things do happen. I mean, I remember even when I was working on the Batman, the cartoon show back in, early 2000s, because of the movie, we weren't allowed to have Commissioner Gordon in the show for some reason.
That's why Gordon's not in the show?
Pretty much.
The first 2 seasons, he wasn't. I think he showed up basically.
About that.
He showed up in season 3, though. That I know for a fact.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So that was, again, for, and all these things about like guns and things like that too, right? Because it's really weird, but these Columbine events seem to happen like right before we're going to release. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
and when you have a character who has guns strapped to his wrist, that presents some issues.
Yeah, but I mean, even for the TV series of the Batmans and stuff like that, because I heard like Batman the Animated Series too. Like, well, in our I think it was like the Beware the Batman, the CGI Batman thing. I can't remember what. I think it was Columbine. Was it Columbine that happened like right before that happened? But again, they were designed as just normal guns, like revolvers, things like that, right? But that happened, and now they became space guns because, So I don't know, like these, but movies and stuff like that, like they sort of tangentially, you know what I mean, like on a broad umbrella way, kind of, limit us as far as like, okay, now you can't do that because, you know what I mean, it might step on basically the movie premiere or something like that, you know what I mean? But as far as like, as far as inspiration of stuff like that, like we don't really, because we don't really know what they're doing, because it's not like we talk or anything, you know what I mean, or they send us stuff. So
well, the other thing I was about to mention is that Deadshot is a white guy in this movie, and in the movies he's played by Will Smith. So that right there, I was like, they're not going for like that type of synergy.
Yeah.
Which I'm like, okay, fine, because that way you have like all the different versions of the characters were represented. So that's actually really cool. Dave says, Beware the Batman is a great show, very underrated. It may have been the Dark Knight Rises theater shooting that affected that one. It was probably that one.
Yeah.
Probably that one, and that one actually involved the Batman project. So that's
right.
Probably also
Yeah.
But yeah, on that note, that seems like the best place to wrap this up, Sam. It's always a pleasure having you on. You're always welcome, brother. JJheat, always a pleasure co-hosting with you. Stay heroic, everyone, and remember, Lois Lane is Lois Lane. Yes, I have to. That's our new thing, Sam. That's our new thing. All right, I'll see you later, guys.